Okay, we are back to the Building Your Life podcast. My name is Doug Sandler. John, Southern California is a lot like Southern Florida right now. Are you 80 degrees and sunny right now? I know we're going to make everybody mad in the rest of the world.
We are not. We were 60 degrees this
What?
morning with wind. So wind chill was probably like 55.
Oh my gosh, you had all those 80-year-olds that were bundled up in their parkas.
More than just the 80-year-olds. My wife was like, man, she's getting out the sweatshirt.
I understand. I understand. Well, welcome back to the podcast. We're going to record a series of podcast episodes today in this recording episode, and it's funny as I was thinking about the topics that you had sent over to me in preparation for this. I'm like, you are all in my head on topic number one. I'm excited to chat about this because literally 10 minutes before I got an email from you, I was having a conversation with my girlfriend about, hey, when do we stop like the growth phase and start to think about, okay, it's not really just about money in the bank, it's really about the cash flow that you have when you get to retirement. And I'm not in that zone quite yet, but I'm in the planning zone for that. I want to make sure I'm like, how much do you need in the bank? Well, it doesn't matter how much you have in the bank, it's what your cash flow is. That's at least the way that I'm looking at it. Am I looking at it wrong? Should I look at it differently?
No, you're thinking about it correctly because it's a phrase I often use. Cash is not king. Cash flow is king, right? And you get to a certain point and you start moving a little bit more to income, and you may get to the point in your life in maybe retirement where everything needs to be fixed income, but hopefully you're not there. And the other thing is, even when you're, say, younger and you think, well, I don't need fixed income, you might want to consider what portion of your funds actually do produce income, because you want to be producing some income to consistently invest, especially if you're not consistently investing part of your salary, which
Right.
hopefully you are.
Right.
But at any rate, you'll be able to take that dividend income or that interest income and then reinvest it on a dollar cost to average
Right.
basis. And so you're investing both at the highs and the lows, but you're consistently buying, a few shares, and that averages you out over time so that your growth becomes actually more. So you always want, I shouldn't say always, right? That's not a good phrase to use, but you almost always want some version of growth in your portfolio.
What do you say to the person that's out there though that says, "Hey, but right now, we're at December of 2023 when getting if you're doing a little shopping on the internet, getting a 5.5 or even maybe in a 5.75% interest rate return on a savings account, which was unheard of. I was getting 25 cents from sorry that I forget that big bank. It starts with a W and ends with an F. I don't like to name any names here, but I get a 25% interest check or interest deposit at the end of the month. And I'm like, there's got to be something wrong with this. Even a small amount of money gets you 100, 200, $300 a month in interest. I'm like, why am I just not collecting that money? So what do you say to the person that's like, well, I don't know what I'm supposed to do. Fixed income, I can get, at an interest rate, I can get 5.5% right now.
Yeah, I say, hey, this is a much different story than we were talking about, say, 2 years ago.
Right, for
And
sure.
I would say you should, but don't go overboard, because you don't know when this party
Right,
ends, right?
right,
When do they
right,
take the punch bowl away from that side of the ledger? And you just don't know. But at least you're being paid to wait,
right.
right?
Take a couple of years. Hey, look, if it takes a couple of years at, if you have 25 grand in an account getting 5.25% interest rate, you're making about $120 or whatever a month in interest or something like that. And it's like it's like free money. They're giving me basically $1,200 a year, and that's just in one account. So over a couple of years, I mean, I'll take the 2,500 bucks in my pocket as opposed to keeping it in a checking account, getting 25 cents a month in interest.
Right. And truly, this is one of the first times in many, many, many years that we've had a what I call a real return, which is a return above what inflation is
Right, right,
increasing at.
right.
And of course, there's a whole big debate on how inflation is calculated, and we should have we'll have
Oh
a
my
topic
gosh.
on that one at some point too. Does that really matter? And the answer is yes and no. Like so many good questions, the answer is yes and no, but that's a whole different topic. But at least you're getting a real return right now. I don't think anybody could come up with the idea that at a 5.5% interest rate right now. Now, a year ago, that
Yeah,
still wasn't a real rate of return. Now it is, because inflation has come down.
right.
We're not in disinflation, but in the rate of inflation has come down. So,
All right. Well,
there's a real argument there.
let's go back to the topic at hand, though. So, when do we stop? When do you advise? When do you talk to your clients about, okay, we have to start thinking about more closely about your cash flow and less about your growing your fund, and spend less time focused on the growth and more time focused on the income that you're going to create.
So, of course, it's different for everyone, and this is not investment advice, right?
Understood.
Got to say that. Um, when you get closer to retirement, so within, say, 3 to 5 years of retirement, you want to start stepping up the income that you're producing. And by in so doing, you want to step down the volatility, so the up and down movement of your overall assets. So you want to kind of, and part of that, there's a twofold reason. One is you want to begin to get a feel for and an understanding for, on a psychological level deep inside of you, this is what I need to do in retirement, because a lot of people have trouble psychologically with that switchover. And you get a feel for, what am I going to need to do? Which dials am I going to need to turn, and how far do I need to turn them in order to create my personal paycheck protection program, so I replace my paycheck in retirement without worrying about whether my account is going to go to zero.
Right.
Then, as you get into retirement, you need to do some math. I know, 4-letter word, but you need to do some math. Figure out again what kind of, because your risk parameters change. The older you get, you tend to get more risk averse. You tend to become more afraid of risk.
Right.
That risk that your assets drop in value. So you need to kind of stay in tune with yourself, because your mind and your heart will change as you get older, because you no longer have that income coming in. Even though we could get laid off, we get fired from our regular jobs at any time, it doesn't feel that way usually, right? So when you're in retirement, that's it. There's nobody going to give you a raise unless you give yourself a raise. And turning those dials just right, so that you remain part of your portfolio in growth, because you very well might need that, because later on you might need that growth to be able to increase your income. So how do you do that, and what dials do you turn? Are you happy? Are you okay with your income producing securities also being somewhat volatile? That's a big question, right? Because you can really get some amazing returns on an income basis if you're okay with a little volatility, or you're even a lot of volatility. You can get some really, really good returns. You spoke earlier about when we were talking about an 18%, and people say, oh, that's too good to be true, but it exists out there.
Yeah.
It does. And for a portion of your portfolio, that might be the right thing. On the flip side, if you're not okay with that, maybe you need an annuity, which is, and I rarely say this on the show or anywhere else, provides a guaranteed income stream for the rest of your life, period. End of story. You could live to be 120. That check is still going to come, and you can even get an inflation adjustment built in there. Now, that's going to cost you some money and reduce the amount of income that you're able to produce. But for many people, at least a portion of their portfolio, I highly recommend that. That will allow you to sleep at night like nothing else.
Well, my favorite annuity, of course, is Social Security. and
That's
then,
right.
and,
That's
and then
true.
and then my second favorite annuity is the one that cost me the least amount of money up front, that has the biggest the biggest payout on a monthly basis. It's really hard to when it comes to the balancing act of all of these things, though, because you have to fine tune it, or you could be like George Foreman and come out of retirement 3 or 4 times. It's like, okay, well,
Right.
what am I supposed to do? Go back into the ring at 65 years old and start fighting again? I
Might
don't
be a
want to.
bad idea.
Yeah, yeah, I think it's a bad idea for anybody. And I'm saying figuratively for those in our listening community, go back into the ring, meaning go back to work. How many of you, when you get your eyes set on retirement and get to that stage, and you haven't fine-tuned it, as John is saying, that you get to have to make a decision about whether you're going to actually go back to work again? I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with being a Walmart greeter, but it's usually because you have to rather than because you want to. Is that fair?
I think that is probably fair, and with a few notable exceptions, I think it's absolutely fair to say that.
So we want everybody that's out there to kind of, I love the idea of the fine tuning, because the fine tuning is all of those things that for me as a consumer, it's very difficult for me to decide. For you, as someone that is not only my accountability partner in the financial world, but also an advisor in the financial world, it's a little bit easier for you to not only hold me accountable to do the things that we decide that we're going to do together, but also advise me on the other side of it too, which I think is really something that most people, or many people, don't do. They want to do it themselves, or they want to half do it instead of full do it. So I don't
Right.
know. I'm challenged with that. That's in when those people are, they have generally have the biggest concerns, the biggest complaints, but they haven't necessarily taken a step closer to a guy like you to do what you do.
Yeah, I think there's just a lot of yes, there's a lot of math. The four-letter word there again. There's a lot of math involved, but at the end of the day, mathematics, and here all my quant guys are going to get upset with me, but I truly believe that math does not solve all problems. The quant guys, they're amazing. They do amazing work and everything else. But at the end of the day, you have to be able to marry the math and the probabilities. And that's all you come up with math is probabilities.
Right.
The math has to be intertwined, combined, and married to what you feel in here and deep in your chest and and in your mind. Are
Yeah.
you going to be able to sustain it psychologically, and do you need to, right? Is there any reason to worry about it every day? And that's where build your life, not just your portfolio. That's really where that philosophy comes from.
I think that's the biggest challenge in the consumer world today, is that it is not a one size fits all solution. There could be completely different outcomes with completely the same amount of money in the bank, cash flow coming in. One person could love the idea of that, and the other person might think that that's not an adequate lifestyle that they want to be able to live on the other side of it. And as
Right.
you get closer to retirement, sometimes you're you don't have the same level of or you definitely don't have the same lifestyle at retirement as you do when you're living high off the hog with a lot of cash flow coming in the door. And oftentimes, while you want to do some really fun things in retirement, sometimes you have to take a more realistic view based upon the amount of capital that you have in the bank and the amount of cash flow that you have coming in the door.
Right. Yep. And that's part of what we talk about up front when you're in your 30s and 40s. How do we prepare now for what your best life is going to be in retirement? And maybe you sacrifice then, maybe you sacrifice later. And again, that's a choice that everybody needs to think about and make.
All right, so let's tell everybody that's in our listening audience how to get a hold of you to get more information about getting them one step closer to retirement. There are people that are a little closer, like me, than the 30s or 40s. I'd love to go back to my 30s and 40s. I keep thinking, would I do anything differently? I don't know that I would do anything differently.
So that's a great place to be, isn't it?
You can't. If I didn't have the ability to look into the crystal ball and know what the future had, I mean, shoot, I would have invested in some of those stocks that I didn't invest in.
Sure.
Maybe hit Amazon or Walmart or even Exxon a little bit harder on my investment schedule. But since we didn't have that, All right. So John, instead of looking in the crystal ball, let's look into reality's face right here. Let's talk to our audience about how to get in touch with you for more information and how to get in touch with your group.
Yep, you can always reach out to me on my LinkedIn, or I'm easy to find. Just type it into Google, you'll probably find me out there. But Guardian Rock Wealth with a TH on the end of it.com. And there's all kinds of free information out there that we put out that anybody can listen to or read or whatever. And then there's a contact us page there. Or if you got your cell phone in your hand, get that out and text 321-421-5213. Text the word life. And that will bring up my business card with all of my links, including a link directly to my calendar. And that goes directly to me. You won't be talking to a member of my staff for that.
All right, that's perfect. Well, that's all the contact information. And if you need more ways to get in touch with John, we'll put all the links in the show notes. If you haven't listened or been listening long, go back and listen. We have a full archive of, I think, well over 100 episodes that John has put together. Some of them with me, some of them with better guests. But you can take a moment and listen to John espouse the virtues of why working with him is a good idea. I say it all the time. I think it is a good idea to work with a pro. So you should do it too. John, thanks for being here, sharing your expertise with our audience today.
All right. Thanks a lot. We'll see you next week.